knew we needed a theme song, and I had some time on my hands, and so I thought, hey, I'll start writing a theme song. I start off with, if you like to talk to tomatoes, if a squash can make you smile. And I got stuck on a rhyme with smile, and eventually came up with produce aisle, which when I came up with it, I was really excited because I was super frustrated. I couldn't find anything that fit with smile. And I thought Larry could be playing the tuba along with it because that'd be the easiest instrument for him to play since he didn't have any hands.
I actually borrowed a tuba from an old band directing friend of mine. I used to be a band director, so got a tuba from him. Played it live, threw a couple mistakes in there because we realized Larry's not the best of tuba players, so I could have fixed some of those mistakes, but wanted to keep the realism in there. Now in the theme song, we keep saying that Larry's playing the tuba. That's not really correct, because a tuba looks something like this, except much bigger. What Larry's actually playing is a sousaphone. Here's a picture of a sousaphone. See how it wraps around the body? John Philip Sousa actually invented this so that the tuba players in his marching band could march along with his band and carry their instruments with them.
To answer the cucumber, I actually started to write that in a car.
What's the cucumber? Oh, how smooth his motion, like butter on a bald monkey.
I was dating my future wife at the time, who is Colombian and a native Spanish speaker, and she had this tape called Los Americanos, and it was actually a guy singing all in Spanish about the Americans, and it was a parody song about just sort of making fun of Americans in a nice way, and my wife would translate that for me.
Look at the tomato. Isn't it sad? You can't dance. Poor tomato.
I just thought that was a really fun dynamic. Here she is. Here's a song being sung in Spanish, making fun of Americans, which was me, and she was translating it, to me, So I thought that was just a really great dynamic, and so I wanted to, thought, okay, that'd be a perfect thing for Bob and Larry to do.
No comprendo. No comprendo? I'll show you no comprendo!
I wrote kind of how I wanted to structure the jokes in English, and then asked Lisa, okay, can you help me with Spanish words that rhyme? And so she worked with me in laying it all out so it actually worked in Spanish and rhymed in Spanish, but the concept, remained, what it was from the beginning. So it was a real fun process just to work through that with her. I wanted it to sound authentic, and so I didn't want to sing it with the obvious gringo accent that I had, and so my friend Manuel came in. He sang the whole song through once we had finished writing it. And so I made a tape of that and put it in my car and would just listen to it. I'd listen to it for a couple weeks and would sing along with him to try to get the accent down as best as I could. And so then when I went in to record it, it sounded like, I knew what I was doing.
You know that in love we can forgive. It is the only way to live.
About this time, people in Chicago started hearing, about there are these guys up on the north side making videos, and so they started sending us voice tapes. And one of them was a guy named Jeff Morrow, who turns out was the voice of Diggum from the old Sugar Smacks commercials, which is pretty cool, and had done, Folgers in your cup, and just had this huge voice. It's like, oh, I love this voice. And so we cast him as Palmy, the palm tree, with the little coconuts that sing backup, which are both my wife. My wife is both the coconuts. And Jeff was the palm tree. And it was just so cool, because Mike and I could never, ever do a voice that big and rich. And it was our first, one of our first attempts to bring in a real voice person, not just two Bible college dropouts who thought they could do voices.
And now it's time for Silly Songs with Laddie, the part of the show where Laddie comes out and sings a silly song. So without further ado, Silly Songs with Laddie.
The Water Buffalo song was the very first silly song and the only one that I wrote. And I was walking through the plaza of the Dirksen Federal Building in downtown Chicago, and I had a handful of tax forms. All of a sudden, into my head, this little song just jumps. And I start singing, everybody's got a water buffalo, yours is fast and mine is slow. And I thought, well, where did that come from, first of all? And that's kind of fun. That could be, the first little goofy song that we put in as this break.
This is the only silly song I had absolutely nothing to do with. Phil came up with that little ditty. He sequenced it at home with his one or two little modules and his little drum machine, and brought a friend in, Mike Sage, played guitar on it, and that was that.
When we were working on Water Buffalo, just singing through the first verse to the second verse, everybody got a water buffalo, woo! That was supposed to be originally that was just supposed to be a real short note, but when we were in the booth recording it, I just thought it'd be fun. I think Three Amigos is one of my favorite movies. I just love. It's just a really goofy movie, when the guys sang the Three Amigos theme song, they hold out that note forever, and I wanted to do something like that similar in the Water Buffalo song. So I just held that note out all the way to the second verse, and it took a few takes to get it down, just because you get so out of breath when you hold it that long. So I had to make sure I had a huge, enormous breath right before I started to go all the way through.
But everybody's got a water buffalo.
I start writing the first VeggieTales episode, and I think, okay, I think there should be a song here. Got out my guitar and just strummed these 3 simple chords and sang. Called my wife in, said, "Come here, Lisa," and she's a music major, so it was a little embarrassing. Said, "God is bigger than the boogeyman. He's bigger than Godzilla or the monsters on TV. Oh," and just sang that little song for her, and she just stared at me. Said, that can't be a song. And we were going to a church where they had a great music director whose name was Kurt Heinecke. And I was watching him one Sunday, up on stage, and he had his synthesizers and sequencers all out and was doing all this great stuff. And I thought, I'm going to go talk to that guy and see if he could make my little song sound like a big song. And sure enough, he was interested. He wanted to help out. So we started writing these little songs, and then Kurt would try to actually turn them into real songs.
If my lips ever left my mouth, packed a bag and headed south, that'd be too bad. I'd be so sad.
I Love My Lips. I actually wrote the majority of that song on jury duty. It was a song that I came up with the hook of it on a drive from Minneapolis to Chicago. I'd been visiting my brothers in Minneapolis, and started basically singing the basic parts of the song. I wanted to actually yodel as Larry, so it started off as "I Love My Tongue." There was another, so where now where he scats, he was actually yodeling.
Phil had a great concept there, taking all the different elements, the guy singing "Oh, know what we're gonna do," and have that drum part in there, kind of like sing, 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 that big band sort of feel. It was fun to work with that. It was a challenge back then because, again, we had no live instruments. We didn't have a budget for that sort of thing, so I had to create everything in my sequences and my samplers and my keyboards, and to try to get that live feel. But the song is great. I mean, to take those different lines you'd call it counterpoint in music history, where you take one line and it comes in and it sings one part. Now you add another part that sings a completely different part, and then a third part, but they all blend together miraculously. And that's just great writing, and Phil did all of that.
My wife and I had just seen Joseph, in the Technicolor Dreamcoat by Andrew Lloyd Webber. So I thought, okay, I can do that. I'm going to write a musical based on a Bible story, just like Andrew Lloyd Webber. I'd never done anything even remotely close to that. And I woke up in the middle of the night with this little melody going through my head, bump, 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 oh no, what we gonna do? So I got out my mini cassette recorder and I ran into the bathroom and shut the door.
In the middle of the night, I woke up because he wasn't there, which does not happen. And I am thinking, where is he? And I look and I see a light coming from under the bathroom door. And I'm thinking, is he sick? What's going on? I better go check. And I went over, and as I got closer, I see this shadow as if he's sitting next to the door, which made me worried. Perhaps he was ill. And then I hear this song. I hear him going, "I am King Darius. I've had a dream."
I was actually in the shower one day, and I usually shave in the shower, and the razor that I used wasn't there, and so I was looking around for it, and I just started singing, "Oh, where is my razor? Oh, where is my razor? Oh, where is my razor?" And I it just sort of clicked. It's like, oh, well, that's kind of fun. And so then I developed that into this whole little, mini opera about looking for, my razor. Why do you need a razor? You don't have any hair. And I don't have a whole lot of facial hair. So that's where that sprang from. And so I just sort of built this whole song about Larry looking for his razor so he can shave, and then went to Phil and said, hey, here it is.
And I said, problem. I have a problem with that as a mother. And he said, I guess I didn't think about it. He was in the shower that morning. And it came to him. He couldn't find his razor. He shaves in the shower. What's that all about? But he's, where's my razor? And he said, that's not going to work. It's really bad. I said, Mike, we just cannot be sending children all over this country looking for their parents' razors. So he said, hairbrush. Oh, where's my hairbrush? We said, great, go run with it, write the song, and he did. And can't remember when we came back in to record it. And we had all seen the words and thought this was going to be just hilarious. We loved it. And we all came in. I think I was the first one to come in and record. And Junior has the line, why do you need a hairbrush? You don't have any hair. And Bob has those lines of, that hairbrush of yours, And I'm in the booth recording it spoken because that's how Mike had envisioned it. He envisioned the only sung part of this whole thing to be aware, and then it would just be all spoken. And the funny thing is that Kurt had already laid down the piano track, that fun piano, almost kind of Lady on the Railroad kind of sound. And he had laid it down, and so we had to fit our lines in between whatever space he had given us in terms of that arrangement. And so I went in there to record my line, why do you need your hair, but you don't have any hair? And I'm hearing this and this music, and I'm in the music, and I just sang it. I said, why do you need a hairbrush? You don't have any hair! And they were laughing and crying, and I said, I'm sorry, I know I was supposed to. And they said, no, that's great. Maybe we should sing all these lines.
The bunny, whoa, I ate the bunny.
The great thing about the Bunny song is it's a really catchy song. The bad thing about it, which is probably the catchiest song in the whole video, and it was the song that you weren't supposed to sing. And so, parents, we got some letters from parents afterwards saying, love the video, but, my child is, singing the Bunny song. I won't go to church and I won't go to school. I don't want my child singing that. And so when we did when we made the video, the sing-along video, and in subsequent records, we actually, changed it to the new and improved Bunny song, which is, using the same catchy tune with words that you would like your children to be singing.
We are the pirates, so don't do anything. We just stay at home and lie around.
I toured with the Continental Singers after my first year in college. At the end of the summer, in the fall, we were going to be in Boston, in the Boston area. And I just started singing a song about never being to Boston in the fall, and how, I've never done this and I've never done that, and I've never been to Boston in the fall. And actually a few of us in the group actually, started to sing about this. And it was just fun, but it was a melody that had stuck in my mind, over the years, because this was, a number of years previous to this, probably 10 years before the point where I actually wrote the pirate song.
We don't do anything.
I think one of the keys to the silly songs is, for my role, not making them silly at all. I take the music and I try to be as legitimate and as straightforward and as authentic as I can be with them. If it's a polka, I want to write a polka. If it's a tango, I want it to be an authentic tango. Spanish song, keep it real Spanish. And that way, the irony really shows up when Larry is singing over this in his seriousness, whatever he's singing about, Barber Manatee or other elements, water buffaloes, you name it. But he's serious too, and in that we see the irony and we see the humor of it.
The images in the ink blots that Larry's looking at, I wanted them to go from the very obvious, which are obvious ink blots of things that look like lips, to the very obscure, working their way to Sonny Bono and Avogadro's number, at the end. Avogadro's number is the number of molecules in something. I don't know what it is. I can't remember. But I was a science major at the time, and it was very meaningful to me then. But I can't remember what Avogadro's number is. But I remember Avogadro's number. I Love My Lips, I think, over the years has, unintentionally turned into, a collector's item because we've had so many different incarnations of that one Rorschach card, as Larry's going through, it's a lip, it's a lip, it's a lip, 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 it's a lip, it's a lip, it's a lip, lip, lip. He's, all these different cards are flashing in front of him, and on the big lips, lip, 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 on that big lips, originally, when I first came up with the song, that was Newt Gingrich. And I don't know why, just because the name Newt Gingrich is funny, and he was big in the news those days. So I originally put that in, but then there was concern over, is this going to be viewed as too political? How are people going to take this? So maybe let's think of somebody else. And I had, for a birthday present, a friend of mine had given me a signed picture of Sonny Bono, and in his little tuxedo holding his tie, and it was just a really, funny picture. And Sonny Bono is almost as good as Newt Gingrich in terms of initial laugh value, and so so we stuck Sonny Bono in there, and that worked great. And but then he died in a skiing accident, tragically and sadly, and we wanted, out of respect for him and his estate, we didn't want to, keep his picture there. We had put it in obviously before that, but so we decided to change his picture. So Sonny Bono then became a picture of an animator of ours we had here. We just took a cutout of his head and put it on the tuxedo, the same photo, and that went out. Well, then our legal department came back a little while after that and said, let's do a drawing of it so it's completely original. So a caricature of that same artist was done. That was incarnation number 4. So then that survived for a number of years, and then we ended up changing it again because this animator wasn't completely comfortable with this picture up on there, and so the latest incarnation is now of a picture of me in a tuxedo, caricature of me in a tuxedo. So, I don't know where it's going to go. It's almost like the curse of the Rorschach card, and maybe as as we go along, it'll continually change year by year. Well, there's a very famous painting by Edward Hopper, which is actually in the Art Institute in Chicago, and it's been parodied many times, either by Bugs Bunny or, I think there's an Elvis or a James Dean version of it, but it's basically, 3 people in a diner, in a New York City diner called Nighthawks. And it's just, the painting itself, you can imagine a story around that painting, and, I just wanted to throw vegetables in there and see what kind of story you could get. After we did the cheeseburger song and Madame Blueberry, a radio station from Duluth, Minnesota actually sent us a petition signed by, a bunch of their listeners. Basically, it's a Bring Back Our Silly Songs petition, because they felt, bad for themselves and bad for Larry that, Archibald had, kicked him out of doing silly songs. And so it was sort of, just very tongue-in-cheek, but it was this, an actual petition, and it came in, it probably had, 300 signatures on it. And it came time for us to, do another silly song compilation or another, sing-along compilation. And, I just thought that was really cool and wanted to incorporate that in somehow.
We, the undersigned, believe that Archibald Asparagus should forgive and forget the Song of the Cebu incident and return Silly Songs with Larry to regular veggie programming, signed 167,512 adoring fans, including, but not limited to, the entire population of Duluth, Minnesota, and even someone in Moose Lake.
This is a song about a boy. A song about a little boy and his taboos. A song about a little boy and his 3 taboos.
That song I wrote in Colombia. I had gone to Colombia with my wife to visit, and I saw these animals walking around, and they just cracked me up. They were Cebu was the name of these animals, and I think the English equivalent would be Brahma bull. And they were, they were just everywhere, and they were kind of sad-looking and looked a little malnourished, but they just had a lot of character to them. And this one town that we were in, we were going out for ice cream with some friends of hers, and we were driving to the ice cream store, and there was two Cebu just walking up the street, And so I imagined a story where they had just gone for ice cream and now they were walking back home. And so I decided at that point I was going to write a song about Cebus.
Mike had a real specific idea for the general rhythm of that song. It needed something contemporary with all these percussive elements and some of the synthesized sounds, but it also had to have this sort of ethnic folk sound to it.
We didn't have a lot of fun in the desert. We didn't have a lot of fun in the sand. But saddle up your cow and go behind us now, because we're going to the promised land.
The fun element that I could bring into that was a lot of wacky instruments. Got to use the kazoo. I've got two different ones here. Going to the promised land. Got to use kazoos and the slide whistle here. So anytime you can use instruments like that in a song, it's got to be a good song.
Good morning, George. How are you? I hope you're feeling fine. I'd love to stay and talk, but it's almost 8 o'clock and I haven't got the time.
Laura the Carrot, such a cute voice. Kristen Blagan just has captured a nice quality there. She was one of the actresses that we used to work with at church when Mike and Phil and myself were all at the same church down in Chicago. People like Kristen and Dane Anderson, Dan Asparagus, Mike Sage, one of the Scallions, all were in the drama and the music teams, and so we would hear their voices each week on stage. Phil would hear something in that voice. Okay, I think Laura the Carrot, she'd fit well with that.
I thank God for this day, for the sun in the sky, for my mom and my dad, for my piece of apple pie.
Phil wrote the Thankfulness song. With Madame Blueberry, that's the first VeggieTales episode that I wrote. When we were trying to develop a theme, originally it was about contentment. So what does contentment mean to a child? And that means thankfulness. A thankful heart is a happy heart. And and Phil did a great job, incorporating that into a little song.
The Thankfulness song has such an endearing, simple message to it, and such a easily memorable melody that we actually ended up using it sort of as our theme at the beginning of our shows. Why we do what we do. You hear just that first little line, da da dum da da dum, which seems so perfect for what we do.
You go ahead and keep walking.
Keep Walking was fun just because the amount of P's in that. And Phil and I did all of the P voices, and there was probably, 25 P's singing that, and we just tracked that thing to death, and it was so hard to come up with a different P voice with a French accent, so we just went through, so what other kind of French accent can I come up with? I think I've only got 2 in me, but we just, sang for 25 P's and then added them all together, and it sounded like an entire P chorus.
You silly little pigeon! You silly little peas! You think that walking around will bring this city to its knees?
Well, they're French, so how do you capture French? Well, the accordions, of course. A French cafe, you imagine the accordions playing in the cafe. So I wanted to capture a little bit of that, and that's both in the sound of the accordions, but the style, the 3/4 rhythm in the middle as they're talking and taunting them. So I wanted to create that Broadway feel, this typical Broadway song, but at the same time we had to bring in that French element for the P's.
You're not going to sing, are you?
You're big, I'm little. My head only comes to your middle.
We got a little more budget. I was able to actually use my live trumpet playing some. We've got this big band drums going boom, ba boom, ba doo, ba doom, ba da, as they're going back and forth. So we tried to bring that into that song also.
With his help, little guys can do big things too.
Check it out, check it out!
The seed for the Stuff Mart wrap actually came from a trip to one of those giant warehouse stores. I don't know if it was Sam's Club or Costco or whatever, but it was the 5-pound can of tuna. I remember the first time I saw a 5-pound can of tuna, I just couldn't believe it. And the whole Stuff Mart wrap was built around a 5-pound can of tuna. Some of the stuff that was just very memorable to me going into one of these stores for the first time was the tuna, the air compressors. There's always a big line of air compressors, and then just other stuff like scuba gear. You find anything in there. So I wanted to make sure it was stuff that you'd see and you'd kind of notice in one of those places, and then the goofy things that you would do with them. You buy an air compressor to blow fruit flies off your dresser, which is really hard to say, and even more difficult to sing.
He said to her, I'd like a cheeseburger, and I might like a milkshake as well.
His cheeseburger started off with the concept behind what would happen if Larry fell in love with the girl at the drive-thru window. And so it started off as Drive-Thru Girl was the name of it. And after I got into it a little bit, into the lyrics, I just thought, this isn't Larry's song. It sounds kind of weird, for him to be singing this song. And so Mr. Lunt, who I'd always really liked as a character, I thought, this seems more like a Mr. Lunt song. But then as Mr. Lunt started singing about the Drive-Thru Girl, that just sounded kind of weird to me also, and so I changed it to Cheeseburger. But then it's the very first silly song that Larry wasn't in, just coming up with this whole story about how Larry got, removed from the silly songs. It's a song that I'd love to finish. At the very beginning, Larry is there in a bear trap, And actually, the original version, we actually had a couple of verses in there of Larry singing some kind of song with the bear trap. I've forgotten what it is by now, but just for timing, reasons, we cut it out at the end.
Mike came up with this concept of a story taking place in the Swiss Alps with a veterinarian. You've seen it all the time.
That was inspired by the Chad Mitchell Trio for me, which is a comedy folk trio. It was an album that my dad had, and I used to listen to a lot as a kid. But I just thought it'd be really funny to tell this story about, this veterinarian who yodels, who really doesn't do any good, and it's his nurse that actually, prescribes the correct remedies. I just thought the combination of the quartet was really funny, which was Frankencelery and Scallions number 1, 2, and 3. Phil did the voice for Frankencelery and Scallion number 1, and then it was me and Mike Sage for the other Scallions.
It was a challenge because you can't even record a quartet like that as you might typically record a group, because, well, first of all, 2 of the voices are sung by Phil, and then so he can't sing those together. And then you bring in Mike and Mike Sage on the other characters' voices. They all get pitch shifted because they're character voices, so you have to record it a little bit slower and a little bit lower. So you get each individual part recorded, coaching them on what parts to sing, and you start blending those together and creating a cohesive blend that sounds like a group would be singing it together.
A couple of months after the show came out, I got a clipping in from a fan. It was a newspaper story out of some newspaper in Wyoming, I think is where it was. It was about a veterinarian who yodeled. And I just, that was hilarious. There's nothing new under the sun. As wacky as you can think up things, real life is even wackier.
As Kurt and I were working on the music for that, I wanted this sound, and Kurt was trying to come up with something for it musically, and I wasn't really happy with anything that he came up with, and finally he just said, well, why don't you just do that into the microphone and we'll affect it? And so it's like, sure, okay. So I went into the microphone, and then he processed that, and that's what's in the song of me, doing that. And I remember also saying, oh, I want something, kind of really crisp on the high end, and like these, like this. And Kurt has like these little instruments laying all over his office, he just collects millions of instruments, and he had these little finger cymbals. And I said, like this, and it had these finger symbols together. So then he took those and added those into the track. So you have this really high-end, crisp finger symbol things going with me going. So that was my addition to the music. At the very beginning, Larry is there in a bear trap, And actually, the original version of Cheeseburger Song, he was actually, we actually had a couple of verses in there of Larry, singing some kind of song with the bear trap. I've forgotten what it is by now, but just for timing, reasons, we cut it out at the end. But, so that's the unfinished bear trap silly song.
So much of the glue that holds a score together is based on the themes. You've heard them in every movie you've gone to, in every TV show you've watched. There's a theme there. You may not even realize it. But it captures the essence of that. It's either a show or a character or a scene. So oftentimes, as we begin a show, we'll talk about, okay, what are the themes that we need? Okay, this character is doing something and it happens a couple times in the show, and that's important to the story. Let's have a theme that reflects that. If Larry is a hero in the show, let's come up with a heroic theme. Maybe it's in a French horn or a trumpet. Dum-da-dum, dum-da-dum. All of a sudden, he must be heroic because I'm hearing heroic music. But if Bob's sneaking around, okay, we need some sneaking around music. Pizzicato strings going dun-da-da-da-da-da-da, bum, 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 bum. So we'll start out with a basic theme. Let's say Larry's heroic theme, bum-ba-bum, bum-ba-bum. But now maybe he's gotten into a trouble spot. So let's make it minor and soften it up a little bit. Bum ba bum bum ba bum bum ba dum bum 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 bum. Bring in a question there. What's going to happen next? So we can even work with our main themes, but as we turn them around with tempo, dynamics, how loud or soft they are, and what instruments are playing them, we can all of a sudden switch that theme and communicate just the opposite, but it's still reminiscent of the original theme.
I wanted to have a song that would play at the end when it was time to sum up what we had learned. Very similar to the end of any kid's show like Mr. Rogers or Captain Kangaroo, when it's the time to say goodbye song.
We were driving on the way to church, and we came up with this melody.
And we were harmonizing on it. It's like, this is great. But we had to go through a whole church service. And of course, in the church service, they're going to play songs which will knock whatever song you have in your head completely out.
He said, Lisa, you have to sing this song all through church and remember it so we can run home and we can play it on the piano or we're going to lose it. And I thought, okay. And we walked into church, and the whole service, and even, the worship songs, and and I felt horrible. I had to do it. And so we raced home and sat down at the piano and plunked it out and wrote the What Have We Learned song.
Which has terrorized Bob ever since.
We just kind of layered it all together and listened to it, and it sounded pretty good, but it was really missing something. And I think we sent Phil into the booth to maybe do a low bass part or something, just try to come up with anything. And he went in there, and of course, because it's in a cinder block cellar, there's no window, we can't see what's happening. And we start hearing this percussive sound that was making the whole song work. And so we opened, what are you doing in there? And he's like, I'm playing my cheeks.
That kind of stuff. And that's the percussion in the song, is me playing my cheeks. So we had this great idea for a new video. We thought, okay, we've got all these silly songs, and they're all over the place, like one per show, and then we've done our sing-along videos, and each one of those has its own silly song, which of course you'll never see unless you bought that sing-along video. Gee, it's really an obligation to try to pull all these together and give them to people so that they can, it's for the people. It's for the people. Of the people, by the people, for the people. They need their silly songs in one easy-to-carry package. But then we thought, well, wait a minute. Which one is the silliest? I mean, just out of our own curiosity, what do people think of all these songs? How would they rank them in silliness? And that that hatched the idea of, okay, let's do a whole contest, a campaign where people can vote for their favorite silly songs, and then we'll do a video that counts them down, you know, number 10 to number 1, like Casey Kasem, and gives you the silliest silly song of all time, as picked by the fans.
We've asked our loving and loyal fans to cast their votes for their favorite silly song.
So then we got kind of excited because that was a fun concept.
We wanted to fashion the show around the pirates, so I took a poll.
This is where things started to go wrong.
So I sent out an email, you know, please send me your 3, you know, favorite silly songs, and I came up with a list. From that list, the pirates that don't do anything were number 7, you know, which worked to our advantage because that would be great because there would be that conflict. They'd come up, you know, earlier in the poll, you know, close to 10. They'd be upset about, and they try to rig the election to go their way. So what ended up happening when the votes started to come back in was
for a while, for a long time, the pirates were coming in number 1.
They were coming in number 1, and it was Pirates and Hairbrush, and they kept passing back and forth, and we were sweating it out, but we realized that no matter what, it was either going to be 1 or 2, so this script that we had wasn't working. It just wasn't, but we had already animated it, and so, or almost finished animating it, and it worked out really well. Surprising, you know,
the will of the people
prevailed.
Overruled the will of the staff and made for some rather tense editing moments.
That's right.
Endangered
Love.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, that one has a real
That has a story behind it.
It's a curious mammalian sensation.
It started out, Mike,
fabulous lack of
every now and then Mike comes up with a silly song idea that you'll never see because I know how many letters we'd get.
Initially, Larry was watching a cooking show about a Cajun chef who, and the name of the first verse was albino manatee. So we changed it up a bit.
That went out the window.
So, you know, Larry is watching this ridiculous soap opera about manatees and love, in all the while having his little stuffed manatee on the couch who he tangos with, you know, during the song. So it's a tango style song.
Right, and that is actually what of all the songs that Kurt's done, you know, to me that's one of the most impressive because he literally, you know, studied classic tangos and took them apart so that he could build this one. You know, it is so accurate to classic tangos, it just blows me away. It took like a year, but it was worth it.
When Mike comes up with these lyrics that still astound me, it doesn't always need funny music to go along with it. It needs sometimes serious music because then we create the irony between just a wacky lyric and the straight music in the background. So for this one, Mike said, you know what, we're going to do a tango. We started studying tangos. We went out and rented some tango movies. I bought a couple tango CDs and really picked apart what's a tango. So the fun there was to create as authentic of a tango as I could so that the lyrics and the story on top of that would be even funnier.
I'll take you to the ball. I hope you're not too tall.
The Dance of the Cucumber.
Larry will be performing the traditional Argentinian ballad, The Dance of the Cucumber, in its original Spanish. Bob the Tomato will translate.
Dance of the Cucumber came about while I was dating my wife. My wife is a native Spanish speaker. And one day we were driving around in the car and she had this tape I forget the name of the singer, but he sings a song called Los Americanos, which is, it's a song about a guy is singing in Spanish and he's sort of poking fun, you know, at North Americans.
That's not very nice.
Well, it's funny. It really is. It's funny in Spanish to see. So the dynamic of her explaining the song to me in English, which was basically, you know, I'm a North American, she's sort of making fun at me, of me explaining that to me. I just thought that was a hilarious dynamic and thought it would be, you know, great to do a song like that between Bob and Larry while Larry is singing something in Spanish and Bob knows how to translate and is realizing that he's being made fun of as Larry is singing. So I thought that was really funny.
He wishes he could sing
Fuerte y dulce como el pepino.
strong and sweet like the cucumber,
Pero no puede.
but he can't.
Ni siquiera dar un silbido.
Can't even whistle. All right, that's it, senor.
Larry's High Silk Hat.
One day, while he was waiting for the trolley, he had a hat.
My high silk hat.
The high silk hat. Neither of us made it, but that's okay.
Well, Mark Volcano, our animation director here at Big Idea, wrote High Silk Hat as a classy song with Larry.
Mark envisioned this great Italian song. I mean, we used a couple very famous, very familiar Italian songs in there to give it this classy sound. We pulled together about 25 of our own animators and people that work in our office that sing. So we put our own little choir together and recorded it right here in one of our rooms.
Oh, it was to the tune of Funiculi Funicula, and I wanted to have Larry trying to bop gophers to the tune of Funiculi Funicula. So I thought that would be kind of funny.
And all, but then, you know, Mark kind of came to me and said, do you think maybe we could do it my way? And I said, oh, I think so. Because it's such a parody, you know, parodies Forrest Gump, and then kind of the classic, you know, looking at early 70s Italian movies, kind of the feel of the film and the grain and everything.
His last name is Volcano, so he's Italian.
Volcano.
Yeah.
Is that Italian?
Yeah, it's very Italian.
There you go.
Now what do you think of that?
The Water Buffalo song.
When we made the first VeggieTales video, I had this notion that there should be a little short something in the middle, and then in every show, it could be something else, just completely different. So for the first one, I thought, okay, let's just do this little silly song, this just goofy little song. And I was actually, that was the Water Buffalo song. It was the very first silly song.
The Water Buffalo song.
Oh, that's a nice one. The grandfather of silly songs. The one that started the whole thing.
Which worked great. Everybody loved it, but it was never intended to be like a recurring thing. It was just the silly thing we did on the first show.
Everybody's got a water buffalo. Yours is fast, but mine is slow. Oh, where'd we get them? I don't know, but everybody's got a water buffalo.
We got to the second show, God Wants Me to Forgive Them, and I didn't want to do another silly song because we'd already done that. Been there, done that.
Stop right this instant! What do you think you're doing? You can't say everyone's got a water buffalo and everyone does not have a water buffalo. We're going to get nasty letters saying, "Where's my water buffalo?"
And then we started getting letters immediately, like right off the bat, saying, "Where's the silly song with Larry? What did you do with the silly song with Larry?" And my first reaction was, wait a minute, when did we promise that there was going to be one on every show? We never said that. I never promised you a silly song on every show.
I beg your pardon.
And we thought, okay, they seem to like the silly songs.
The silly songs kind of evolved because the first one, I remember Phil talking about walking down a street somewhere and this Water Buffalo song popped into his head. And he just had to write it down quickly.
I was walking through the plaza of the Dirksen Federal Building in downtown Chicago. And all of a sudden I just started singing, just like out of nowhere. Everybody's got a water buffalo, yours is fast as mine is slow. And this little song just, you know, hit me like a tax form on the head.
IRS-induced silliness.
You got your, everybody wants a water buffalo, yours is fast but mine is slow.
Everybody's got a baby kangaroo. Yours is pink, but mine is blue.
The Yodeling Veterinarian of the Alps.
Oh, we didn't do the Veterinarian
I
of the
love
Alps.
that one.
Yeah, the Veterinarian of the Alps.
Veterinarian,
You
yeah, I
okay,
do.
let's talk about
That's
that
one
one.
of my favorites.
Yes.
But I don't have that much to say about it.
Since I couldn't do yodeling like I wanted to on I Love My Lips, I had to do scatting. I wanted to have another opportunity for yodeling.
Yodeling, 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 yodeling.
Okay, I want that. I want yodeling. Also, around the same time, my wife was pregnant with our first child.
We have recurring themes of yodeling and Mike's wife. You'll notice. Many silly songs.
Yes.
This is a song for your pregnant kitty. She's looking nauseous and a weak past due. But if I sing to your pregnant kitty, she will feel better in a day or two.
Some of the wackiness from this is just bringing together different styles that I would never think of putting together. You've got barbershop quartet and German polka. Yeah, let's do a song made up of that. They'll come up with ideas I would never imagine, but then that's the wonderful challenge of it. Okay, how do I make this work with that? And then you put those together, and it's a completely new creation that nobody's ever heard before.
And so just the concept of a veterinarian who yodels was funny, and then, you know, and then just if he's in the Alps, because that's where you yodel, then that'd be even funnier. So the yodeling veterinarian of the Alps, sung by the Scallion and Frankencellery Quartet.
This is a song for your poor sick penguin. He's got a fever and his toes are blue.
Song of the Cebu.
Ah, the Cebu, the Song of the Cebu. Well, that was inspired by a trip to Colombia. My wife is Colombian, and one Christmas we took a couple weeks and we went to Colombia to visit her dad and her brother and her friends. Yep. And we took a lot of time when we were there. We took the bus around to a lot of little small towns.
You didn't bring me anything back.
I didn't. I brought you a silly song back.
Yes. You brought that to the world.
A song about a little boy and his taboos. A song about a little boy and his 3 taboos. The little boy who had a thick taboo, a sad taboo, and a mute taboo.
In one of the towns that we were in, I think Neva was the name of the town, we went out for ice cream one night with a couple of my wife's friends, and on the way to the ice cream place, walking down the middle of this street were these 2 Cebus. I didn't know what they were. They were the Brahma bulls, is I guess the English phrase for them, but they were walking down the street. And
did they have ice cream too?
Well, see, that's what I thought. I thought they're on their way back from having ice cream. Isn't that cute? They're on their first date. So they're coming back from the ice cream store. That is so cute. So that just got me thinking about Cebus. It's like, oh, I want to write a song about Cebus because they're just really funny looking.
And what on earth is a Cebu, anyway?
It's kind of like a cow. See?
Yes.
So is it Cebu or Sabu?
Cebu.
Because you say it both ways in the song.
I know. That's unfortunate.
Okay.
Boo. Sing it with me. Say boo. Say boo. Chicken.
Kung Pao.
Chicken.
Mongolian.
Chicken.
Sweet and sour.
Chicken.
Cashew.
Chicken.
Do the mushu. Mushu, shoo, mushu.
Ah, the Mushu song. Yeah.
Mushu song.
Yeah. Well, part of the concept behind the whole video was, the pirates that don't do anything, but the day before they had ordered, Chinese food, and that's something.
Obviously
Yeah.
something.
So Pa points out, oh, you did something yesterday, so you can do something now. So they had ordered Chinese food, so we have sort of this Chinese food theme running throughout the show.
Have a wonton. Ooh. Kung Pao squid?
No.
So the concept behind it was that, okay, what would it be to have a song where you just grabbed a menu and started making up words from the menu, using it sort of as a
Right.
choral sheet.
Which may have involved the fact that Mike didn't have a lot of time to invest in a new song. I'm not sure. The only other fun thing about the Mushu song is that the director of the movie, Tom Bancroft, was the supervising animator on the character Mushu in Mulan, in Disney's Mulan. See? Full circle, Mushu, Mushu.
His cheeseburger.
He said to her, I'd like a cheeseburger. And I might
Oh,
Oh,
the song.
cheeseburger song.
Yeah. You know what that one started off as?
Joke?
It started off as a joke. Well, I thought, what would it be like for Larry to fall in love with the girl at the drive-thru? But as I got into the song, I started to realize that it wasn't Larry's personality at all. Just the song would not work with Larry. So so it was called Drive-Thru Girl originally. You are his drive-thru girl, basically. So I changed it to Cheeseburger, which is it turned out so much better because it was just so hilarious.
The concept of the song was an homage to the 1970s, power rock ballads.
Right.
And we actually, Kurt was using for reference Meatloaf,
And Air Supply.
Meatloaf and Air Supply. Yummy.
We went out and got a couple CDs of groups like Meatloaf and Air Supply and started listening to them. I mean, I hadn't even listened to these groups when I was growing up. But then we had a couple ideas that we listened to some specific songs to get the singing styles of some of the favorite singers from back then.
Clean that dirty cheese off just for you.
That part.
That was my moment.
You are his cheeseburger.
Love my lips.
Yes, what is the explanation for I love my lips?
I was in the car driving back from Minneapolis. I'd been up to visit my brothers in Minneapolis, and I was driving back and just started to sing this song about, if my lips ever left my mouth, packed a bag and headed south, I'd be too bad. I'd feel so sad, So I was, relating it to my own insecurities. And And so I kind of came up with that little line, and I actually really wanted to yodel. You know, I thought, you know, Larry's got a, you know, the ability to yodel, which hadn't been utilized yet, and wasn't utilized until later. So it started off, you know, yodeling. You use a lot of your tongue for yodeling, so it started off as "I love my tongue," and so he would, yeah. So he would remember that. That's right. To pick a different musical styling beside yodeling, I thought scatting would be great, which you lose a lot of your lips for, and so. You know, so you know, so love my lips is what it turned into.
Oh my!
The pirates who don't do anything.
We are the pirates who don't do anything. We just stay at home and lay around.
Yeah, the Pirates song, actually,
where'd that come from?
Way back when, I was actually, before we started VeggieTales, I was on tour with the Continental Singers, who are a singing group who travel around the United States, and Archer also went to Europe.
He was the sound man.
I was the sound man for the singing group. I was on the trip, and we had a few people around us, and we were just being goofy on the bus, and I started making up a song about never being to Boston in the fall, because in the fall, in the tour, we were actually going to be in Boston, and you know, so I started singing about never doing this and never doing that and never being to Boston in the fall, and it got really goofy, and I really liked it.
I didn't know that.
You didn't know that?
No.
Yeah. So I had that part of it, but I thought, you know, I wanted to do a song about pirates. I thought it'd be really funny. I really liked the dynamics, just the personalities I wanted to put together were Larry, Paul, and Lunch, because they were just, you know, really strong, oddball characters, and I thought putting them together as pirates would be really funny. And just, you know, thinking about an angle about pirates, what would be goofy about pirates? So if there were pirates that didn't do anything, if they were just lazy and sat around and did nothing, that would be hilarious.
That's funny.
Yeah, so that's kind of where that song came from.
He's no dummy.
That's right. I can connect things like that in my brain.
And I've never licked a spark plug, and I've never sniffed a stink bug, and I've never painted daisies on a big red rubber ball, and I've never bathed in yogurt, and I don't look good in leggings.
You just don't get it.
And we've never been to Boston in the fall.
Pass the chips.
The hairbrush song.
Our curtain opens as Larry, having just finished his morning bath, is searching for his hairbrush. Having no success, Larry cries out,
"Oh, where is my hairbrush? Oh, where is my hairbrush?"
The classic, the hairbrush song.
The hairbrush song, that's right.
That song really ended up taking on a life of its own, because we went in to record it, and the way Mike had written it, all of the lines, you know, Pa Grape saying,
I think I saw a hairbrush back there.
Those weren't sung, they were all spoken. So it was Larry singing, "Where is my hairbrush?" and Pa coming in saying, "I think I saw a hairbrush back there." And we got into the booth to record it, and my wife, Lisa, was junior. She came in to do her line, which she was supposed to just say, "Oh, why do you need a hairbrush? You don't have any hair." But Kurt Heinecke had already scored it, had already done all the piano. So the piano bed was exactly as it is now. It didn't change a thing. And when Lisa got in there, instead of saying, "Why do you need a hairbrush? You don't have any hair," she followed Kurt's piano score and sang it.
Why do you need a hairbrush? You don't have any hair.
And it just, you know, cracked us up. We just like fell out of our chairs laughing. So we stopped recording, stopped the session, and said, "Okay, let's see if we can do that for every line. You know, without redoing any of the music, because Kurt had already finished the music. Let's see if we can figure out how to sing every line that Mike had written through the whole song." And so it was completely spontaneous, just because, you know, Lisa sang her line instead of reading it, that we figured out how to sing every line through the whole song, and it was genius.
Magic.
The end.
Going Up was a piece about perseverance, and it was conceived to be sort of a throwback to Laurel and Hardy and Three Stooges, silent films.
We're going to do VeggieTales, do the Three Stooges. Cool, okay, and it's going to be a silent film. They're not going to talk. It actually worked out pretty well. It's a pretty fun little bit. I mean, the key is, you know, originally they wanted to just put up the art cards, say, all right, here's what he's saying, boop, And then you always have to remind yourself, some of our audience can't read yet. So then the French piece, is going up. The piano must go up.
The piano must go up.
Mais oui!
Which made it actually pretty fun.
My hero.
All sunshine and roses, no rain came my way.
Now listen up.
Tim Hodge has always played the harmonica and always apparently appreciated the blues and was looking for a way to incorporate his love of the blues into his work with VeggieTales and found that way through a character known as Blind Lemon.
I remember being in college and I took some art classes and I was really drawn to like German expressionist art. It was really kind of moody and dark and I thought, oh wow, that's really cool. And then in my art classes I would actually try to imitate that. But after a while I just realized, you know what, I'm too happy to do this. I'm just too smiley to be able to mimic this art style. You gotta have more angst for that. And for this, the blues with Larry, it was very similar. It was like Larry goes in and tries to sing the blues, but he just doesn't have it in him because he's always seeing the bright side of things.
Sorry, man. You way too happy to sing the blues.
His Majesty, the troubled Prince Omelette, requests his daily eggs.
Omelette is one of my favorite shorts, I think, that we ever produced. It is just so cute and so little and so silly. And it actually has a point, which is nice.
Our good friend Eric Metaxas, who's a great writer and just a really smart guy. It was fun to kind of take a veggie highbrow approach to a story. And so Eric laid out this story of Omelette and we have all these Shakespeare puns in there and everything.
So he came up with this idea of doing these little classic spoofs of literature and wanted to do Shakespeare.
To eat or not to eat? That is the question.
I love the fact that they did the whole thing as little cutout sets, on this little cheap stage, this kind of fake, very low budget theater feel with little characters, propped up like cardboard cutouts. One of my favorite parts, of course, is Mr. Lunt playing the role of Ophelia.
I think we're gonna get letters about this. It is I, the fair Ophelia.
Of course, in Shakespeare's time, the parts of women were played by men, so, we felt we had to be true to that.
I'm not sure how we got away with that, but we got away with it. And I don't think we've gotten a single letter.
Did you understand any of that?
Not a word.
Hello, I am the Englishman who went up a hill and came down with all the bananas.
Initially, the way that one was set up was on the countertop, Jimmy and Jerry took over the show and dressed up like Bob and Larry. We did that for the countertop and wrote the countertop, and I just thought it would be fun for Jerry Gord, who's known for not being so bright, for coming up with his own story that he's attempting to tell, as Larry or as Bob. He wanted to come up with a story on selfishness, which is what the theme of the whole video was. So Jerry Gord, put together this, story, which was just, kind of lame and ridiculous and awkward.
It's just so funny. I couldn't stop laughing when he showed it to me for the first time. And the timing and the music that Kurt came up with in the background, the little rinky tink, tink, ding, ding, ding. Awkward pauses. Comedy is almost more about what you don't say than what you say. It's about the pauses between what you say, more than what you actually say. And this short is such a good example of that because they just stand there sometimes and look around, and that's where the funny is. The funny's in the gaps. I just love this short.
Oh boy, this is a life.
It represented a couple of firsts in the history of VeggieTales. I remember it was the first occasion where we really had to figure out how vegetables were going to interact with props and get away with it. The first time it happened was when Bob and Larry were driving the boat. And I remember thinking, okay, they're gonna be behind this big wheel. They don't have hands. Can I just have the wheel turning and nobody will notice? And in the front-on shot, where you just see the wheel and then behind it, and the wheel is turning, it sells. It's fine. Then we cut to a side view, and in the side view, there's space in between Bob and Larry and the wheel is still turning. That didn't work so well. And I think that's where I realized, okay, the only way we can pull this off is if there's never space between the prop and the veggie. They have to overlap, because then people kind of buy it. You've suspended disbelief, and it worked.
Well, moms, dads, and kids of all ages, have I got the thing for you. The new Ronco Forgive-O-Matic.
Forgive-O-Matic. Okay, now we're going back. That's actually from video number 2. God wants me to forgive them. So this is like 1994. I wrote the Forgive-O-Matic as a puppet show script in Bible college in 1985. So I had this script, and the only thing I could think of was, okay, the first show had Silly Songs with Larry, where Larry sings about his water buffalo. Everybody's got a water buffalo. The second one, I thought, let's mix it up. We don't need a silly song on every one. So we'll do this little TV commercial. So that's the story of the Forgive-O-Matic. It's really one of those lost little gems. It's kind of like looking at Steamboat Willie with Mickey Mouse. You're looking at something that is so old and so antiquated, but it's charming in its innocence.
Oh, look, it's time to go.
But wait, there's more.
Lunch was a short produced by an animator at Big Idea named Keith Blango, and he produced it entirely by himself, all on his own, wrote it, directed it, animated it, the whole thing. So it's another kind of one-man work of art. It's kind of fun to see a short that comes entirely from one person. So it's completely their voice, completely their sensibility, and their effort all the way through.
It was just a great little piece. Again, a pantomime piece. There was no dialogue in it, but it's just really fun to watch.
Binky the Aardvark. It was an interesting time. We were transitioning. We decided we've been using one animation package for all of our shows, a software system, since the very beginning. There were several newer systems that seemed to offer more of what we needed for VeggieTales to keep it improving, to keep raising the bar on every show. So we decided we put together like 3 or 4 guys in each group, animators, and said, all right, you can do a test of this animation. So the first group built the Aardvark on the new animation software and did a short where they took a clip from a movie or a TV show, and I don't even remember what clip it was. Now the second group was about to start, said, we're going to have this Aardvark sing opera. I thought, oh, that could be really fun. Okay, let's do that.
Ron just animated it as this Aardvark who was, up on stage, trying to get a great and silly reaction for, kind of how he sang the song. So he's just bouncing around and just making a lot of funny gestures to the audience and, expecting a big response at the end and, just hearing crickets.
We loved the clip and we thought, okay, we can use this now. It's a great clip kind of in our library. Let's bring it out, put it on something. And we realized, wait a minute, where did you get that recording of that song? Because the song was obviously public domain, but a recording of a song isn't necessarily public domain. And then we looked into it and realized, no, we can't use that recording, so we had to do our own recording that we would own, that we could put along with the animation. And turns out that Brian Roberts, who is now one of Big Idea's leading directors, is quite a singer. I'd always wanted to do stuff that was more purely educational. So we thought, well, let's find historical people from Christian history, and maybe we can tell stories about them. And we came up with the idea of covering St. Patrick.
Everybody knows about St. Patrick's Day, but not a lot of people know about St. Patrick. So we just thought it would be fun to tell his story and just this idea of, within the church, he was, one of the very first missionaries, at least, the first missionary to travel outside of, what was the Roman Empire to bring the Word of God. And so it was really, kind of, I think an important lesson for kids to learn and just a really fun and different way to tell it.
The end.